This is my TNA Hardcore Justice 2010 pay-per-view preview. Now, this is just going to be a preview for this pay-per-view that's going to be happening tomorrow night. It's not going to be really a predictions pay-per-view. It's just going to be me kind of previewing the two matches that are just announced. That's all that's announced for this pay-per-view right now. And mainly my thoughts on TNA doing a ECW themed pay-per-view, a ECW reunion type pay-per-view, and my thoughts in general on that and what I think of them doing that idea. Now, at this point, you just got two matches announced. You got the RBD versus Jerry Lynn match, which will be the one thing on this pay-per-view that'll probably be something great. These two will be able to go out there and have a great match. I highly doubt that their match will fail. It'll be a pretty good match. I'm sure it will be. And you got the Tommy Dreamer and Raven with Mick Foley as the guest referee. Since it's obviously going to have, hardcore rules behind it, that could possibly help that match, but I'm not really expecting too much with a Tommy Dreamer versus Raven match, especially in 2010. 10, 15 years ago, great to see the Tommy Dreamer and Raven feud, but now I don't think either one of them are going to be able to go out there and perform what they used to be able to do. But possibly, with, hardcore rules and stuff like that, that might be one thing that possibly could help them. Now, as far as the talent that's on this pay-per-view at this moment, you got, obviously, Rob Van Dam, Tommy Dreamer, Foley, Sabu, Sandman, Jerry Lynn, Raven, Rhino, Stevie Richards, Team 3D, Al Snow, Simon Diamond, Too Cold Scorpio, Axel Rotten, Johnny Schwinger, Brother Run, a.k.a. Spike Dudley, C.W. Anderson, the FBI, and many more to be announced, I guess, as a surprise on the pay-per-view. Now, out of that, they pretty much got most of the people they could get, but there are a few people that are missing. One person in general missing, but this is not TNA's fault why they couldn't get him. He turned it down, which is Lance Storm. Lance Storm was given an offer to be on this pay-per-view, but he turned it down mainly to, say that, would have been made himself look like a complete hypocrite if he would have showed for a TNA event. Basically, the way he's been talking about TNA as far as their booking and everything for a long time, either on his website or, Figure 4 online and the Wrestling Observer Radio. And basically, his thoughts on that would have made himself look like a complete fool if he would have actually appeared for a TNA pay-per-view. So he kind of stick to his guns, didn't want to appear for that main reason. Now, Shane Douglas, I know they tried to get him and Francine. I think both of them turned it down. So those are the three people that only turned it down. Now, as far as Masato Tanaka or Super Crazy or Tajiri, I don't know if TNA actually tried to get any of them. Now, Tajiri and Masato Tanaka, they might have not been able to get them due to them having bookings or doing stuff in Japan at this moment right now. And Super Crazy, I don't even know what he's doing right now. I think he's doing some things with some indies in the United States, maybe down in Mexico, working down in Mexico as well. So don't know if they try to get him. Those are the main ones. And Just Incredible. Just Incredible, I kind of wish they would have got, because on this type of pay-per-view, it would be better to have the more people that actually can still go, because at this moment, the people that are announced for this pay-per-view that are going to be able to still perform are RBD and Jerry Lynn, and that's almost about it. Rhino, he's actually not that bad. He could kind of still go. Raven and Tommy Dreamer, I don't really expect much from their match. They're definitely a shell of their former self, like a lot of the talent that's on this pay-per-view. Now, don't know what type of match they're going to be doing with Team 3D. Obviously, they're going to be teaming up with each other. I was thinking maybe they'll take on someone like Sandman and Sabu, or if they had Ian Rotten on here, I would definitely think they would take on the Rottens, but Axel Rotten's the only one announced for this pay-per-view, not Ian, so that probably won't be doing that. Or they could possibly have Sandman and Rhino team up, take on Team 3D, but a lot of this, they're kind of making it like, what's going to happen, kind of like a lot of surprises, and they're trying to make it kind of feel a little like ECW pay-per-view, kind of like, two of the main matches, but everything else is not going to be announced for the pay-per-view. And ECW was definitely like that back in the day, where, you didn't get everything announced beforehand. But in 2010, especially with the ECW reunion show, you're not going to just be able to sell an ECW reunion show just on two matches in just saying, well, we got a lot of these ECW talent, just look at the names we got. You're not going to be able to sell it just on that. And, you know, it's kind of ironic that, you know, TNA, you know, with their pay-per-view and this Hardcore Justice pay-per-view, they only got 2 matches announced, but the Thursday after this pay-per-view, which TNA is building as a pay-per-view type theme Impact, kind of like a Impact with pay-per-view matches and stuff that you would have expected to see on Hard Justice this pay-per-view if they didn't do the ECW pay-per-view. And they got everything booked for that. Yeah, they actually got everything booked for that Impact, but they only got 2 matches booked for this pay-per-view. Now, as far as the dismal numbers, as far as TNA's pay-per-view buy rates recently, it's been reported that I think their May pay-per-view and their June pay-per-view only got 8,500 buys. So maybe with the ECW theme pay-per-view, especially with, for some reason or whatnot, I don't know how it is, but I think the 2 recent Impacts hasn't been verified yet, but it's looking like the Impact this past Thursday did a 1.2, and the one before that did TNA's highest rating probably since Hogan and the January 4th Impact. So that's pretty good for TNA. You know, their ratings are on up, so I don't know if, you know, this is something that, you know, people are actually tuning in to wondering where they're going to go with this ECW thing, and, you know, you actually got some former ECW fans to tune in to TNA for a change or something like that. Or it's just, you know, fans are starting to check TNA out. I don't know what it is, but obviously TNA is going to probably bank on that it's because the ECW angles they're doing, that's the reason why their ratings are going up, which is going to give TNA the message of, let's keep on booking these older guys over the younger guys and actually, you know, focus on them more than, you know, the types like Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, the Moose and Machine Guns, and all of them. And those talents, instead of focusing on them, focus on the old talent, because that's the one major problem I have with them with TNA doing this pay-per-view. It probably is giving the bad message for a lot of TNA talent backstage, especially the young talent. It's pretty much giving them the message. If I was them, this is what I'd be thinking, that, you know, TNA doesn't think we can draw. TNA doesn't think we can actually draw ratings for Impact, or, you know, draw pay-per-view buys, and TNA is going to try to get more buys on guys that are pretty much washed up. That's the way I would look at it. Is I'm pretty sure there's some TNA talent backstage, the younger guys, that actually probably do feel that way, and probably is giving them a bad message of doing this type of pay-per-view. Now, this type of pay-per-view, you know, you got to remember the last time a pay-per-view going in only had 2 matches announced was December To Dismember. So it could possibly be that in that category of probably being that bad, because really on this pay-per-view, unless they really throw together some really good stuff, which, you know, you don't really got that many former ECW guys on here that can go. So I don't really expect much other than the RVD versus Jerry Lynn match. Now that match right there, I'm expecting at the very least probably a 4-star match. A very good match from them nonetheless. It'll be a great match, I'm pretty sure. And that's the one thing I don't have to worry about delivering on this pay-per-view. Actually, TNA has almost gloated me into almost ordering that pay-per-view just with that match. I'm almost thinking about getting it just because I want to see RVD versus Jerry Lynn. But at the same time, I'm like, do I really want to give $35 to a pay-per-view I know that's just going to give me that match, and everything else could possibly be in the category of December To Dismember, or hopefully it doesn't go this bad, Heroes of Wrestling. I don't think any pay-per-view can go that bad. You know, even no matter what they do with here and throw together with these former ECW stars, I don't think it can even get in that category. Could it get in the category of a Victory Road from TNA, or a ECW December To Dismember? It could possibly get in that category just based on, you know, a lot of these guys really cannot go. And I know a lot of, you know, TNA fans are like, you know, this is kind of closure for the former ECW guys with the way that, you know, Vince McMahon brought back ECW with the failed sci-fi show and pretty much made the ECW name into a complete joke, which in some ways is true. And this, I guess, is kind of like one of those things to have closure, and this be like the last thing you'll see with ECW instead of, you know, what they did on Sci-Fi, instead of like having Mark Henry as ECW champion or the Zombie and what other stupid shit WWE did when ECW was on Sci-Fi, and kind of have closure to the original ECW. That's what TNA's trying to do here. But it's like in 2010, how many people are actually going to be saying, I want to see a ECW reunion show, and, you know, really are stoked for it? I mean, there might be a few people that are like jumping for joy seeing an ECW reunion show, but for the most part, I think everyone going into this pay-per-view that are going to be checking it out are going to be saying, probably the thing I'm saying about it, that everything on this pay-per-view is probably not going to be that good. It's probably might be atrocious, might even be in the category of really, really terrible and atrocious pay-per-view, other than the RVD versus Jerry Lynn match, which, if that match is great, it possibly could be the thing that actually saves this pay-per-view. And maybe, you know, some surprise, maybe an appearance from Paul Heyman on this pay-per-view, him going out there doing a shoot-style promo could be something great. But it's not sounding like that's going to be happening on this pay-per-view. Now, I know Dixie Carter's been trying to get Tommy Dreamer to try his hardest to probably get Paul Heyman for this pay-per-view, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So that's going to be a huge surprise if that does happen with Paul Heyman appearing on here, but I don't expect it to happen, and I don't think anyone should expect it to happen. If it happens, it's great. It'll be great to see Paul Heyman tomorrow, but don't expect going into the pay-per-view or even a chance of seeing him on this pay-per-view. And, you know, the talent on this pay-per-view, like I said, are pretty much, a lot of them are washed-up talent. It's like, you know, does anyone want to see a WCW reunion show? It's pretty much like that. And, you know, WWE, if they would have not, you know, brought ECW back with Sci-Fi, ECW would have had the perfect closure with the first one-night stand, because I think that was the closest we're ever going to get to what the original ECW was. You had the atmosphere with the Hammerstein Ballroom, you had the crowd, and you just had all the talent on there that made that show great, and just the whole ECW type feel with that. And that's another thing with TNA doing this. If you're trying to do an ECW themed pay-per-view, the main thing with ECW that made ECW was the crowd, the atmosphere, and everything like that, with either the ECW Arena or the Hammerstein Ballroom. That was the thing that made ECW, the crowd. And you're not going to be able to get that type of crowd and that type of reaction down in Orlando, Florida, in the Impact Zone. So that's going to be the one thing that's going to kind of hurt it right there, because that's what made, you know, the first one-night stand that WWE did so great, and that's what, you know, made ECW. Their towns they used to go in, the ECW Arena, the Hammerstein Ballroom, and that ECW crowd, and you're not going to be able to represent that in Orlando, Florida. You know, maybe you'll get, maybe some of those, you know, fans of the former ECW, of the original ECW, might come down there and check it out, but I highly doubt it. Especially since it's kind of TNA just throwing it out there, and TNA could have probably, you know, made this show actually look a whole lot better than what it was if they actually probably planned it probably a month or two in advance than what they did, and maybe even tried, you know, to get Paul Heyman more than what they have, which TNA, I got to give them credit, they have been trying to get Paul Heyman. It's really just Paul Heyman, you know, he's even stated that he doesn't really think TNA should have done this ECW pay-per-view. So if Paul Heyman's saying he doesn't think TNA should have done an ECW-themed pay-per-view, do you actually think he's going to appear on the pay-per-view if he's actually said that? I highly doubt it, unless, you know, TNA gives him a lot of money, and maybe Tommy Dreamer talks him into doing it, since Tommy Dreamer is real close to him, and maybe Bubba Ray, you know, he's kind of close with Paul Heyman as well. Maybe some of the former ECW guys can actually, you know, talk Paul Heyman to appear in it, but I don't think it's going to happen. So, like I said, with this pay-per-view, you got the RVD versus Jerry Lynn match, which should be a great match, should be an excellent match, probably the one thing that's going to save this pay-per-view. I'm really looking forward to that match, and I don't want to order this pay-per-view, but it's almost one of those matches that is almost making me almost order the TNA pay-per-view just to check that match out, because I'm a huge fan of the RVD versus Jerry Lynn series in the original ECW, and I'm sure them two can still go, and that's the one thing that's almost making me think about ordering this pay-per-view. It's kind of up in there if I am going to order it, because I do want to check that match out, but at the same time, I might regret ordering it, since it's probably going to be in the category of a December to Dismember or Hopefully it doesn't get in the category of Heroes of Wrestling. It will have to be really bad if it gets in that category. And RVD and Jerry Lynn will probably save it from being in that category. But you got the Raven and Tommy Dreamer match, which their feud in the original ECW, great feud. Loved it. One of the best feuds in ECW. But in 2010, it's not going to be the same. It's just not going to be the same. You're obviously going to probably see, I guess, Tommy Dreamer might go over in that match against Raven, and Foley will probably do something in that match, and it's just not going to have the ECW type feel to it. That's going to be the one thing. If they want to do a ECW reunion show, they should have, done it at the Hammerstein Ballroom, which kind of makes one thing real idiotic, that TNA's actually got a show booked for the Hammerstein Ballroom, and I think in another month or two, or maybe, sometime in November at the latest. I think they got a show actually booked in the Hammerstein Ballroom, so why wouldn't they just wait to do this show in the Hammerstein Ballroom then, and then you'll actually kind of get the, original feel of ECW, the atmosphere, the crowd, and that would actually probably help improve the pay-per-view, but it's not going to get the same reaction, down in Orlando, Florida, and, this pay-per-view, it's going to be depending on how they book it, what type of match they do. Maybe if they throw some surprises out there that none of us expect. Maybe if they actually somehow get Masato Tanaka on here, to Jerry, Super Crazy, and Just Incredible, and maybe a couple other talent. Hell, maybe if they could, he's already turned it down, so I highly doubt he's going to appear, and he's obviously said he's not going to appear, but say if they actually, surprise us, we're not expecting to see Lance Storm on here. Say if they actually somehow are able to get him, but I don't think that's going to happen. He's obviously stated his reasons why he's not going to come on here because of, of his thoughts on TNA, and it will make himself look like a complete hypocrite if he appeared on this pay-per-view. So we'll just have to wait and see how this pay-per-view is tomorrow. The TNA Hardcore Justice ECW themed pay-per-view tomorrow. Just see how it is. Maybe it's not going to be as bad as what I'm expecting, but even though I'm a huge fan of the original ECW, like a lot of other people, I just do not expect much from this pay-per-view. Mainly just the fact that, in 2010, kind of just let ECW go. TNA should be focusing on their homegrown talent, their talent that's going to be there in the future. What is TNA going to gain from this? Maybe they actually can do a better pay-per-view buy than what they have been recently. Maybe they can, sucker in a number of former fans of the original ECW and maybe do better than 10,000 buys. Maybe they can. They possibly could with, obviously, the RVD and Jerry Lynn match. I'm pretty sure that's going to sucker in a number original ECW fans. Hell, it's almost making me even think about ordering it just based on that match. So I doubt I'm the only one that's probably thinking about getting it for that match. But at the same time, I'm probably going to regret it if I order it. So I know going into it that I'm probably going to regret it if I do order it, but I might have to check it out just for that match. So just want to come on here and give my preview of this ECW themed pay-per-view and what my thoughts on them are doing it. Like I said, they should have just let ECW just stay. Just, don't bring it back. Vince McMahon has done enough to destroy the ECW name. Do you want to really come out here? This is probably going to be better closure than, obviously, what Vince McMahon did to the name of ECW. But at the same time, how many of these guys can actually go out there and still perform? On this, you got RVD and Jerry Lynn and Rhino. And I guess, Team 3D, because they're going to be involved in, some type of tag team, street fight or, brawl or something like that. And they could work good in that type of match. So with that, it's going to be determined how they book this. I'm not expecting anything great from it, but, if they book it in a certain way, they possibly can make it at least be a decent pay-per-view. But don't expect much going into this. Just hopefully we won't get something like a Heroes of Wrestling or December to Dismember, because the last time we had a pay-per-view just with 2 matches announced, we were delivered December to Dismember. So hopefully we don't get something as bad as that. But like I said, the RVD and Jerry Lynn match will be the match that probably will save this pay-per-view from being in that category. So yeah, that's it for my TNA Hardcore Justice 2010 pay-per-view preview. Peace on that and what I think of them doing that idea. Now, At this point, you just got 2 matches announced. You got the RBD versus Jerry Lynn match, which will be the one thing on this pay-per-view that'll probably be something great. These two will be able to go out there and have a great match. I highly doubt that their match will fail. It'll be a pretty good match. I'm sure it will be. And you got the Tommy Dreamer and Raven with Mick Foley as the guest referee. Hardcore rules and stuff like that. That might be one thing that possibly could help them. Now, as far as the talent that's on this pay-per-view at this moment, you got, obviously, Rob Van Dam, Tommy Dreamer, Foley, Sabu, Sandman, Jerry Lynn, Raven, Rhino, Stevie Richards, Team 3D, Al Snow, Simon Diamond, Too Cold Scorpio, Axel Rotten, Johnny Schwinger, Brother Run, a.k.a. Spike Dudley. Since it's obviously going to have, hardcore rules behind it, that could possibly help that match, but I'm not really expecting too much with a Tommy Dreamer versus Raven match, especially in 2010, 10, 15 years ago. Great to see the Tommy Dreamer and Raven feud, but now I don't think either one of them are going to be able to go out there and perform what they used to be able to do. But possibly, with, CW Anderson, the FBI, and many more to be announced, I guess, as a surprise on the pay-per-view. Now, out of that, they pretty much got most of the people they could get, but there are a few people that are missing. One person in general missing, but this is not TNA's fault why they couldn't get him. He turned it down, which is Lance Storm. Lance Storm was given an offer to be on this pay-per-view, but he turned it down. This is my TNA Hardcore Justice 2010 pay-per-view preview. Now, this is just going to be a preview for this pay-per-view that's going to be happening tomorrow night. It's not going to be really a predictions pay-per-view. It's just going to be me kind of previewing the 2 matches that are just announced. That's all that's announced for this pay-per-view right now. And mainly my thoughts on TNA doing a ECW theme pay-per-view, a ECW reunion type pay-per-view, and my thoughts in general